And our Week 15 Conference Championship Week college football playoff rankings have been revealed. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with a number of folks on the line as we have just finished up our Florida State Seminoles live show. And I have not seen the rankings, so I will be reacting to the rankings as soon as I see the rankings here. I've just pulled them up on ESPN.com. I'm going to respond to the rankings. And of course, this is the last installment before the very final rankings that come out after the conference championships next Tuesday night, or actually it's going to be on Sunday. Conference championship games on Friday and Saturday. Then the rankings, the final rankings that mean everything, will be revealed Sunday at noon Eastern time. So let's dive into the rankings. And then I also have my college rankings, my top 25 that actually makes sense, my top 25 rankings. So let's make the comparisons here. All right. The college football playoff rankings as of tonight, and then I'll get to your comments and questions. We've got Ohio State at number 1. I've got them at 2. The selection committee has LSU at 2. I've got the Buckeyes at 1 and LSU at Let's start over. Why don't we do that? The committee's got Ohio State at 1. I've got the Buckeyes at 2. They've got LSU at 2, and I've got the Tigers at 1. All right. Clemson at 3. That's where I've got them, as well as Georgia at 4. That's where I've got the Bulldogs. They have Utah at 5, as do I. They've got Oklahoma at 6. Bit of a curveball that some people don't agree with. And of course, my rankings came out on Sunday, so I'm not influenced by the AP rankings or the committee. I could care less what the AP rankings are or the committee rankings. These are my rankings based on resume. I've got Florida at 6. They've got Florida at 9. They've got Utah at 5. I've got Utah at 5. Florida at 6. They've got Oklahoma at 6. Baylor at 7. Let's get to that talking point in just a second. All right. I've got Oklahoma at 7, Baylor at 8. They've got Wisconsin at 8. I've got Wisconsin down at 11. They've got Florida at 9. As I mentioned, I've got the Gators at 6. Auburn, Penn State's at 10. I've got Penn State at 13. They've got, man, I look like a Big Ten hater tonight. They've got Auburn at 11. I've got the Auburn Tigers at 9. They've got Alabama at 12. I've got Alabama at 10. They punished the Tide for that 3-point loss on the Plains at Auburn. The selection committee has Oregon at 13. I've got the Ducks at 14. They've got Michigan at 14. I've got the Wolverines at 15. We were like razor close last week. I had almost the exact selection committee's top 25, and every team that I had in a different spot, it was only by 1. We have parted ways. This next to last rankings reveal here. They've got Iowa at 17. They've got Iowa at 16. I've got Iowa at 17. They've got Memphis at 17. I've got Memphis at 18. They have dropped Minnesota all the way down to number 18. They dropped Minnesota 10 spots, losing to Wisconsin. I know that they got blown out, but they dropped them 10 spots. I've got Minnesota at 12. That's a huge departure right there. Boise State's at 19. I've got Boise State at 19. They've got Cincinnati at 20. I knocked Cincinnati right out of the rankings. App State's at 21. I've got App State at 20. They've got USC at 22. I've got USC at 21. They've got Virginia at 23. I've got the Cavaliers at 24. They've got Navy, and I continue to be befuddled at the ranking of Navy. Navy at 24. I don't have Navy in the rankings. Oklahoma State's at 25. I've got the Cowboys at 22. I also have Kansas State at 23 and Indiana at 25. So the two teams that they have ranked that I don't would be Navy at 24 and Cincinnati at 20. Again, I've got Kansas State at 23, Indiana at 25. There it is. That is probably, and hopefully this will forever be, the worst rankings rundown in terms of reading off the rankings that I've ever done the history of not just Mark Rogers TV, my less than illustrious broadcasting career. That is the worst job I've ever done, reading rankings. All right. I will get to your comments and questions. Let's get to the live chat. I will remind everyone, this is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So if you're joining us for the very first time, certainly this is what we do each and every day, 365 throughout the year. But also, if you've joined us a few times, as many have, we encourage you to dive into the videos, like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe once you determine that we do what we do here, which is discuss, debate, and analyze college football like nobody else. Let's get to the comments. Lucas, it's a beautiful thing seeing Alabama starting to crumble and fall. let's pump the brakes there, Lucas. They dropped to number 12 according to the committee. Alabama is certainly better than the 12th best team in the country, and they just lost to Auburn, a very good football team, by 3 points on a missed field goal. So yes, Alabama has not had a stellar season. They did lose their starting quarterback a few games back, and most likely would have beaten Auburn with Tua healthy. So take advantage of Alabama's fall in 2019. And they lose that fleet of wide receivers and Tua. Yes, they do. And they keep recruiting. Clemson alum 98. I already miss Alabama. Their fans are long gone. And Kyle Pickett with his obligatory Mark Rogers for VP in 2020. FS show was delusional, but entertaining. We're here to entertain, JT Thompson. C Raw, what's up with it, Mark? Just trying to make it through a live stream apparently tonight. I couldn't read the rankings, and now I need some water. We're having a rough go of it. I think JT Thompson is setting everybody up with the free falling. Very nice. Andrew, Notre Dame beat 3 ranked teams. Oregon beat 1. Bama beat 0. All 3 are 10-2. Why is Notre Dame ranked behind Oregon and Bama? Resume. Notre Dame got pummeled by Michigan. And they lost decidedly to Georgia, but they hung in the game and only lost that game by 6. I think you've got a decent argument. Andrew, you've got a decent argument with, let's see, Notre Dame at 15, Oregon at 13, and Alabama at 12. Oregon has beaten Oregon's best wins, Washington 7-5. Washington 7-5. Oregon's best wins, Washington 7-5. Who else have they beaten? So Oregon does not have good wins on its resume. They've got a good loss in Auburn, controlling that game most of the way and only losing 21-16 on the last play of the game. But the Arizona State loss was not a good one either at 7-5. So we can dismiss Oregon to a certain extent. I understand that claim. I've got Oregon ranked 14th. Again, the committee has them at 13. And I understand Andrew's point there with Oregon in particular. But certainly Notre Dame beat 3 ranked teams. So the ranked teams are Virginia and USC, ranked 22 and 23. So they're at the bottom of the rankings. And Notre Dame also beat, who else did they beat in the rankings? I'm not finding this other win. They beat USC and Virginia. And that would be 2 wins against the top 25, Andrew. 2 wins for Notre Dame in the top 25. Oregon beat 1 team. That would be USC. Alabama beat no one in the current top 25. Is that correct? They lost to Auburn. They lost to LSU. So they had two extremely close losses, but you got a point that Alabama has beaten no one in the current top 25. I like to take that into context, though, because the top 25 rankings, to be able to defend rankings, or you're making judgments on rankings and then you're using those rankings that you're criticizing. So you need to be careful with that. Kyle, yes, we do use the facts. Thank you so much for your support, of course. Bill, hello, Mark. How about that Dabo whining? Yes, I went to town on Dabo this week. Check it out. Jay Brown, why is it so hard to put Ohio State at number one? You wouldn't be wrong, so why wouldn't an Ohio kid do it? That's why I'm the voice of college football, Jay. I cut it straight. I do my best to be unbiased and be logical and measured with my analysis. And I still believe LSU to have the best resume. I didn't say the best team. They've got the best resume. And therefore, I will keep them at number one. Had LSU struggled with Texas A&M while Ohio State blasted a top 10 to 15 Michigan team, then I might have been swayed to put the Buckeyes number one and drop LSU to number two. But LSU went out there against a 7-4 Texas A&M team, while Ohio State was blasting a 9-2 Michigan team, but LSU held its ground with a 50-7 win. Where did you have Clemson last year at this time, at this SA6J? Rick, I don't recall. It can be verified in looking up the videos that I picked Clemson to win the national championship last year preseason. So I did do that, regardless of where I had them ranked right at this point in the season. They were the only undefeated team at this point, along with Notre Dame. All right, Alabama as well. I believe I had Alabama 1, Clemson 2, and Notre Dame 3 after the conference championship games. I would be about 99% certain that was the ranking at the time. But again, Rick, I did pick Clemson to win the national championship game last year. And I picked them to win the national championship preseason. Bill, I mean, I didn't see one single top 25 coach cry about the rankings since the season started until this point, except for Dabo, and his team is ranked third. Yeah, he's got nothing to cry about. He's just, as a number of people have pointed out to me, and I'm going to respond to these comments because I got so many comments this week. I must have gotten, between the 3 to 5 videos that I posted on Sunday and Monday, over 1,000 comments, with a lot of people trying to explain to me that Dabo Swinney was talking to his team and talking to recruits. I understand what he's doing. People were thinking that they were educating me on what coaches' motivations are and what their incentives are and what their strategies are, speaking to the media. I know what his strategy was. That doesn't mean I can't call him out. I understand what he's doing, and I think it must be very effective for him because he's one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in college football. I just have the right to call him out. If he's going to use a public forum to send a message to his team, then I can call him out for being illogical and inaccurate. Any scenarios in which Auburn ends in the top 10? So right now they're 9-3. They just beat Alabama, and they're number 11. Of course, they could finish in the top 10 there, John. They're going to go to a decent bowl game, play a formidable opponent, and if they do that somewhat impressively, they'll finish in the top 10. You got to figure out of these top 10 teams, forget the playoff teams, they're going to finish in the top 4 to 5 spots. After that, Utah may not make the playoff and lose a bowl game. Oklahoma or Baylor, one of them will not make the playoff, if not both of them missing the playoff, and they could lose bowl games. Wisconsin's going to have a difficult bowl assignment. They might be playing you, Auburn. And then we've got Florida and Penn State in front of Auburn. I am going to let you know that there's going to be at least 4 teams in the top 10 that are going to lose bowl games, John. So your team has a chance of reaching the top 10. Bill, we appreciate you encouraging folks to like the video. That helps us tremendously. Will Georgia injuries and suspensions have a huge effect on them this weekend? So check out our video that's to be posted sometime tomorrow with Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports. So we talked to 247 Sports and previewed the SEC championship game, and he certainly had his thoughts about the Georgia wide receiver situation, missing 2 fairly prominent wide receivers. RLB Laney, also another thing about Auburn. Yes, I'm an Auburn fan, but I'm saying nothing but the truth here. They lost only one game that, in my opinion, they shouldn't have, and that is the loss to Florida. I have ranked, as the committee does, Auburn higher than any team that has lost the number of games in which they have. When they had 1 loss, I was ranking them higher than anybody. When they had 2 losses, the same. And now with 3 losses, I'm ranking Auburn ahead of teams with 2 losses as a 9-3 team. I still have them in front of Alabama, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State, Oregon, even though I hate to do that because of the head-to-head. And I rank them ahead of everybody else has 3 losses except for the group of 5 teams. Mark, did you see that over 5 dozen players entered the portal today? Are you surprised? Vincent, that looks like something I'm going to need to address. I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that. I knew that a lot of players would do that following the end of the regular season. But in regards to what players, we're going to have to address that. At one point last offseason, I ran through the entire portal and gave a profile rundown of all the players in the portal and the possible impact on the teams that they were leaving. Looks like I'm going to have to do that again. Just another thing to keep track of, the portal. James Scott, I am always indebted to you as you have taken it upon yourself to encourage people and spark them on to action, the call of action, to hit the like button. It's not difficult. So thank you for that. Steve Bolin, if Florida has to be in a bowl game with either Virginia or Memphis, we need to decline. What an insult. Well, Steve, it just may come down to that. There's always going to be a group of 5 in the New Year's 6, and you may have to play them, as LSU did with UCF last year and Auburn did the year before. Baylor played a Central Florida team back at the beginning of all of this in 2013. We had Boise State in Arizona. And actually, the group of 5 teams have done rather well. PJ Fleck's Central Michigan team played, man, I always forget this. Did he coach at Central Michigan or Western Michigan? Central Michigan. PJ Fleck, his last team there, took on Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. All right, so we've addressed this, John, a number of times this week. Say Utah and Oklahoma win out. Who gets in and why? Wouldn't it be Oklahoma, who has more obvious pick, in my opinion? Okay. So what the committee was telling us last week in rating Utah above Oklahoma is that it was of course, valuing Utah above Oklahoma. My question going into this weekend's rankings was, since Oklahoma beat a top 21 team, the 21st rated Oklahoma State Cowboys, and beat them by 18 points, would that be enough to elevate them over a Utah team that simply beat a 5-win Colorado team? The committee is telling us, no, we are keeping Utah above Oklahoma by 1 spot. Now, is that a razor thin, razor close comparison? We don't know unless the committee addressed that. And I would hope that they were asked to that tonight, whether that 1 spot difference between Utah and Oklahoma is somewhat substantial or is it razor thin. So what this points to is that obviously both of these teams need to win their games against Oregon and Baylor, but Baylor is number 7. Oregon is down at number 13. So the committee, number 1, is going to value an Oklahoma win over a Utah win, which is going to make their job a little bit more difficult because they've got Utah above Oklahoma at 5 versus 6, but they have Oklahoma playing a decidedly better opponent in Baylor at number 7 versus Oregon 13. So you would think Utah needs to dominate and impress the committee substantially, although they've got the 1-spot lead. So the committee has put themselves either in a difficult position, depending on the questioning, the line of questioning, or an ideal position in which they could do whatever they want between Utah and Oklahoma, and they can justify it. They can pretty much do whatever they want and justify it. If they want to keep Utah ahead of Oklahoma, and as long as both teams win, they can justify it by saying Utah was ahead of Oklahoma entering the final weekend. But if both teams win, unless Utah is more impressive, and even then, they can justify leapfrogging Oklahoma over Utah because they can point to 2 things. Number 1, maybe Oklahoma was more impressive in the game. But number 2, that Oklahoma beat a higher ranked team in Baylor at number 7 versus Oregon at 13. So the committee is giving themselves the flexibility to do a number of things with Oklahoma and Utah in keeping them at 5 and 6. SEC dog Clemson also beat 0 ranked teams, but they will steamroll whoever gets in the tater path. Dabo, okay, I don't know what all that means. All right, thanks for the comment. Notre Dame beat Navy. Okay, Lucas, thank you so much for clarifying that. Of course, yes, Notre Dame's other ranked win was a blowout of Navy, who doesn't belong in the rankings. We, of course, have all kinds of respect for the military academies and what these young men are doing off the field for us. But to separate the football, Navy does not belong in the rankings. I don't know and understand the evaluation of Navy football. This makes no sense to me that Navy is number 24 in the nation with 2 losses. Okay. Navy has beaten Holy Cross, East Carolina, Air Force, good win. Tulsa, South Florida, Tulane, Connecticut, SMU, good win. And Houston. They've beaten 2 decent group of 5 teams, Air Force and SMU. And they've lost to Memphis by 12, and they lost to Notre Dame by 32. Why is Navy in the rankings? It makes absolutely no sense. No sense. Sir Rick II, Oregon, Baylor, and especially Wisconsin should not be ranked higher than Florida. Sir Rick II, you certainly agree with my Voice of College Football rankings that actually make sense because I've got Florida ranked above all those teams. Florida has lost 1-score games to Georgia and a 2-score game in which they led in the second half in Death Valley against LSU. They've beaten Miami. They throttled Tennessee. Florida's had a nice season at 10-2. And they beat Auburn. Travis, Virginia was strategically but in the top 25, so Clemson could play 2 ranked teams. That's possible. Virginia is 9-3, and they just beat an 8-4 Virginia Tech team. So somebody discovered that we will take calls. I apologize for not putting up the call-in number. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I just joined the live chat. I was in the shower probably when you started, but
You were in the shower.
yeah, I was
You got to work that schedule
down.
out a little bit better.
I mean, I saw the rankings live and everything, so
I'm not talking about the rankings. I'm talking about the reaction here at Mark Rogers TV. All right, what's on your mind, McD?
Well, obviously the rankings. Obviously, I have a few disagreements. I'm going to start off with my main disagreement. I think they dropped Minnesota way too low. Personally, I would take Minnesota on neutral field over Memphis, Iowa, and obviously Penn State, since they beat Penn State, even though that was a home game. But I would take Minnesota at neutral field over Penn State and Michigan.
Yeah, they really blasted Minnesota, and I don't understand it myself.
I mean, the two losses are to ranked teams. They beat the number 10 team in the poll. So I think, like, I understand dropping them after that loss, but I mean, I don't think they should be out of like the top 14. Personally,
I've got them at 12.
But I have them at 12 too. So
there we go. McD, if you and I have Minnesota at 12, they should be at 12.
They should be. They should be. And I had them at 6 the previous week before they lost, so I dropped them 6 spots. So I don't know how much you dropped them, but I had them at 6.
I think I had them at 6. That sounds about right.
So that's the first disagreement. I actually think they dropped Alabama a bit too much. Honestly, I had Alabama at 10. And I did have Auburn at 9 as well. So I did have Auburn and have Alabama, but I had at 9, and I thought those two teams could go up a little bit. I think Auburn's a top 10 team in any of the conference except the SEC.
McD, have you seen my rankings this week? Did you get a chance to check out my rankings?
I have not got a chance to see them.
I've got Auburn at 9 and Alabama at 10.
Me too.
And Minnesota at 12. We're right there, McD. Right in line. Keep going.
Who do you have at 11?
I've got Wisconsin. Wisconsin 11.
Our rankings are identical. So, I mean, but it's going to be interesting to see these championship games, especially LSU, Georgia, obviously. I think Oklahoma Baylor means something this Saturday. I'm interested to see Memphis, Cincinnati. I personally think that Cincinnati should be dropped out of the top 25 this week.
I dropped them too. I kicked them out.
I mean, so we'll see what happens there. And I think Oklahoma State should have been dropped out as well at 84.
I kept them at 22.
I'd kick them out. So, but I think the most interesting thing is Nick Saban saying it's not fair. I can't just like it must be a whole Alabama thing because Auburn doesn't think it's fair to play Georgia and Alabama both of those games within 3 weeks. And Alabama, they don't think it's fair. Nick Saban doesn't think it's fair that they get to line up the punter as a wide receiver. So I guess the state of Alabama doesn't think it's fair or something. So
it's in the rules. Everybody gets to play by the same rules.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think it was fair, and they messed up their Alabama with the substitutes. I am going to give Alabama this though. I do think there was 0 left on the clock there at the end of the first half. So.
Oh, there were. Yes, that was blown. That was a blown situation by the officials. Absolutely.
And even if there was 1 second, there's no way he's snapping that ball that quickly. So
Yep.
I think they got hosed there. But that's all I'm giving Alabama. I've been saying it for years now. Their kicking game's gonna cost them 1 year, and it's cost them this year. So I guess I was right on that. The only other point I want to make, since there's not many games my Terps don't play, even though we're all going to beat Towson on week 1 in 2020, I'll guarantee that. But the only other thing I want to say is I do agree. I know I've been saying Boise State was the best Group of 5 team. I am going to be willing to change my mind if due to Memphis. I think Memphis is now the best Group of 5 team. I changed my mind on that.
You were on the money tonight. You're on fire tonight, McD.
I mean, listen, I believe in the eye test and strength of schedule, and basically that's it, wins and losses. And Boise State, that win against Colorado State was not impressive to me. Memphis, they beat Cincinnati. Say what you want about the Ole Miss thing. And speaking about Ole Miss, what they did to Matt Luke, they're firing him while he was in someone's in a recruit's house, is a disgraceful thing as far as I'm concerned. They should have not done that. Do it face to face, and I don't think he should have been fired personally. But that's just me. But overall, I still think Boise State has a better Power 5 win. But the Americans are stronger than the Mountain West. Boise State, they're going to play Hawaii, which they should beat, like they did when they played them earlier this season, Boise. And but Memphis, they have wins over Cincinnati, SMU, Tulane. So they have the wins on Memphis. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. As long as they win, I think they should be representing the Group of 5. I could make an argument for Appalachian State, but personally, I think the Conference USA, the MAC, and Sun Belt, those teams have to be undefeated to be considered for a New Year's Six bowl. So I could make the argument if I want to, but I'm going to save everybody some time, and I'm on board now with Memphis being the Group of 5 team.
Okay. Yeah, they controlled that game against Cincinnati. They had game control. They didn't blow them out, but they had control.
They did. But that's all I really have. If I don't get a chance to speak to you, Mark, I'm just hoping for a bunch of good games this upcoming Saturday and Friday night. And I'll speak to you soon about who to make fun of in the championship games. So that's all I really have. Thanks for taking my call, Mark. And go Terps. We're going to be Towson next season.
Thanks, McD. Appreciate it. All right, 860-325-3687. I apologize for not posting the number, and only a few of you have, I'm sure, posted it on your refrigerators at home. but some of you do have the number, so there are times in which I fail to post the number, unfortunately, and people still call in. So I appreciate that. Again, it's 860-325-3687. I've got some time to take some calls as well as continue to run through the live chat. I'm trying to keep up with all the comments and questions. Somebody had asked for me to predict an Ohio State-Utah game. Ohio State and Utah. I heard the comment made during the Utah game over the weekend that they could play with Clemson, LSU, and Ohio State. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's a talent separation. I think they're defensively a very formidable team. I think that they have some limitations on the outside at wide receiver, and I just don't think they're deep enough to stay with those three teams. But it would be a really good game. So let's go Ohio State, Utah. How about 37-24 Buckeyes? Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football.
To decline.
Who's on the line? Oh, hopefully we've still got him there. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, got Steve here.
Hey, man, what's going on?
Big fan of your show, Mark.
Absolutely.
Well, I just have a complaint. Really, it's about the playoffs. And the system they use doesn't make sense to me because I'm a Florida fan. You know, we're in the top 10. And the way they have playoffs set up now, we're going to end up playing a team that's like in the 15 to 20 range, you know, if we end up with Memphis. And it seems kind of ignorant that we wouldn't play teams that are closer to your rank in the playoffs.
Well, you make a good point, but you also need to separate the selection of the four teams with the way the rest of the bowl seedings work, because the playoff committee is selecting the top 25, and therefore they're selecting the four teams that make the playoff. Then they have nothing to do with the bowl selections. The bowls then use those rankings to a certain extent to make their selections for bowl games. So that's not the committee making selections of bowl games.
Right. No, and I get that. I just wish we could come up with a system like take Oklahoma. They're ranked 6 right now. Florida's ranked 7. I feel like after the top 4 teams are competing against each other, 6 and 7 should go at it. You know, it would just make for a closer bowl game. I think it'd make for more interesting bowl games as well.
The other portion of this is that a group of 5 team is always selected to the New Year's 6, and typically they're going to be lower ranked, as is Memphis, as you note this year at number 17. Yeah. So that's what kind of blows up your system, which it only makes sense and is logical that if you would pair off bowl teams based on rankings, that you most likely would get better matchups. You're right.
Well, how do you think it could be fixed?
Well,
bowl scenario to get better games with better teams closer ranked. How do you think we could fix it? Is there a way to fix it?
Oh, there's a way to fix it. So what you would do, and
how would you make a stab at it?
This is off the top of my head, of course, so you may be able to poke some holes in my remedy just off the top of my head. But basically, outside of the 4 playoff teams, then you've got how many more bowl games in the New Year's 6? That's including the playoff games? So there's 4 other bowl games, correct? Yeah, so we've got 4 other bowl games, and so we've got 8 spots. So basically, you take the group of 5 team that is typically the lowest ranked, and you play them against the lowest other ranked team. So let's say it's Memphis at 17, and let's say you're slotting the New Year's 6, 5 through 9. No. 8 teams, 5 through 12. So if you follow me, you got the 4 playoff teams are 1 through 4. Then in the other 4 bowl games, you've got 8 slots. So you've got Memphis at 17 currently, and let's say they stay there. So you've got to fill the other 7 slots. So those are numbers 5 through 11. So if I'm going to take a system and kind of play off of your complaint, I'm going to take 5 versus 6, 7 versus 8, 8 versus 9, and then 10 versus 17. And those are going to be my matchups. And the only thing that's going to change that is if, let's say, 2 teams played just last year or the year before, I wouldn't want them to play again.
Yeah, I mean, I get that argument, and I can agree with that. My only other complaint would be I don't think that we should make special spots for every division in bowl games. I mean, I know that makes it somewhat fair so that everybody gets a participation trophy. But, I mean, in all honesty, you know, these playoff games, they should be for the better ranked teams, not just the better ranked team in a bad division.
So you're referring to group of 5 teams?
Correct.
So what do they need to do to participate?
I don't know. I don't have the solutions. I just know that the current system is flawed. And I understand that it's not fair to pick out the flaws without a solution. It's just, it feels like there's so many complaints about the current status quo, we've got to figure out something else.
So we've been doing this since 2000 and either 12 or 13. So the playoffs been since 2014, but there were a few years prior to that in which a group of 5 was selected and included in the New Year's Six, or previous to that, the BCS Bowls. It's the same thing. And those group of 5 teams have acquitted themselves rather well. UCF only lost by 1 score to LSU last year. They beat Auburn the year before. In 2016, Central Michigan lost a 1-score game to Wisconsin. Arizona actually was beaten by Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. Central Florida beat Baylor in 2013. Houston beat Florida State. So those teams have acquitted themselves very well.
Yeah. I mean, they're not garbage. It's not a garbage, division, but it just, I don't know.
They've won more games than they've lost.
Multiple better teams in, say, the SEC than there are in other divisions, and maybe we should allow, if it's just SEC teams in the top tier, maybe it should be a lot more SEC teams, and that's just an example. It could be Big 12, 10, whichever. I guess my last question for you is, with the current with the season and the games that Clemson has played, do you feel that they deserve to be ranked as high as they are? Because they've had a real fluffy schedule, I feel.
So there are 2 points for Clemson, and there is 1 point against Clemson. The 1 point against Clemson would be what you just stated. They have played, I don't know where I would rank it right now. I'd have to go through all the schedules, and in the offseason, I go through all the schedules and rank them. But obviously, some of the better teams that were supposed to be on their schedule did not turn out to be very good teams. Texas A&M 7-5.
Yeah,
Syracuse was the 2nd seeded team in the ACC last year. They turned out to be horrible. The second best team on Clemson's schedule was probably Wake Forest. It's an it's an awful schedule. It's an awful schedule. It's not their fault.
But
no,
being what it is, I wonder if they deserve that top tier status.
But they've dominated the schedule. Outside of one game, they've dominated it.
That's fair. They did. They really did.
So the points would be, pro Clemson would be that they're undefeated and that they've dominated the schedule. And I don't take the third point that some people would make, and that's what they did last year. That shouldn't have anything to do with what we're evaluating this year. But then against them would be exactly what you're stating, that they've played a garbage schedule. Again, Clemson fans, don't jump on me. I'm not blaming Clemson. They scheduled Texas A&M and South Carolina in the offseason in the non-conference.
Way ahead. Now, if you were to have to say take Clemson out of the top 5, who would you have in your top 5 to cover that spot?
Well, I've got my rankings right here. I've got Clemson number 3. I've got LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, Utah 5.
Okay. Yeah, and that seems legit to me. I do feel, I'm a Gator fan. My wife's LSU. I do feel LSU has had just as an impressive season as Ohio.
Yes.
And I think that they should, justifiably be fighting for number 1 spot. All the criticism that Ohio is so much better than LSU from some people, I think is just a fallacy. I mean, they're so neck and neck to me as looking like the only 2 complete teams in the country right now. To put one way far above the other would just be insanity.
So I rank the teams based on their resume, based on the results on the field, not my own perception. So from the time that Auburn beat Oregon in week 1, I thought that was the best win in the country for week 1. And so I ranked Auburn number 1, it was only based on one game. And I moved on from there. And then at the point in which Auburn lost, I believed LSU to have the best resume in the country, and they have stayed number 1 in my top 25 ever since. They have the best resume in the country.
I agree.
And you're probably going to be.
When they beat my team in Florida, that was an impressive win, and they caught my eye after that. Yeah.
And you'll probably be happy with me ranking Florida 6, 3 spots ahead of the committee.
Yeah, I really do. I do like that a whole lot, actually. Yep. All right. Well, thank you for your time, and I love your show. You're doing great, man.
I appreciate the call. Have a good night.
All right. Bye.
As I mentioned many times, my rankings are not perfect. I have never claimed that they're perfect, but they're logical. They are logical. And I've messed up a few times, and people have pointed out some possible mess ups. And I've either defended my rankings when I thought they were needing defended, like they were legit. And there are other times I've said, you know what? You make a great point. This is why I determined it the way I did, but I can certainly see why you are ranking these teams differently, and it's valid. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It's Matt, Mark.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. What's going on tonight?
Do you think the committee will just put in whoever wins their conference championship by more, or do you think it's going to go deeper than that?
So are you asking me to predict the championship games, or are you going to give me a scenario?
Okay, let's say I'll give you a scenario. Utah wins versus Oregon by 10, let's say 31-21.
Okay.
Oklahoma wins on a last-second field goal, 34-31. Do you think the committee will go with Oklahoma, even though they barely escaped Baylor?
So you're going to make it tough on me.
Utah in that situation.
Yeah,
I am.
So I tried to explain this a few minutes ago. The committee has put themselves in a position to be able to do whatever they want in that scenario because they can justify it either way because they continue to place. So my thinking last week was, okay, Utah's one spot ahead of Oklahoma. We don't know how razor close that could be, that ranking, or if the committee believes that there's a distance or a gap between the two. And I was very interested to see what they would do since Utah beat a 5-win team and Oklahoma beat a number 21 team on the road by 2 scores. But they kept Utah one spot ahead of Oklahoma. I don't know if it was asked of the committee chair tonight. It should have been asked how close Utah and Oklahoma are in their eyes. And he probably gave a very vague answer because this is what we're looking at. We're basically looking at the committee evaluating the performance in the championship games. They're basically telling us these two teams are neck and neck, but we are deciding that Utah has a better resume to date. But Oklahoma's playing the perceived better team this weekend, number 7, versus Utah playing number 13. So we can always credit Oklahoma with a better win if we want to, and leapfrog them over Utah Saturday night, or we can keep Utah where they are regardless of what happens and just say, well, they've always been ahead and they're ahead. They won their game. Oklahoma won its game. I'm going to conjecture that if I was in the hot seat, I believe that Oklahoma has and will have a better resume than Utah once they win the Big 12 championship. They will have beaten better teams than Utah. Utah will have beaten Oregon. And Oregon. You know, they've basically beaten Oregon. And who's the second best team that they've beaten? Washington, 7-5. Arizona State, 7-5.
State, yeah, I would probably say Arizona State.
One of those two teams is the second best team that they've beaten. So those are their 3 best wins would be, okay, they beat a 10-2 Oregon team, which they obviously wanted the Ducks to show up at 11-1 and not 10-2. But their second and third best wins are against fairly marginal competition, Arizona State and Washington, unless I'm missing somebody, and I'm not. I'm going through their schedule and going through the Pac-12. Their best non-conference win was BYU, which is a top 50 to 60 win. While Oklahoma has beaten Oklahoma State, who they still have ranked in the top 25 at 8-4, a Texas team that's not very good, but still 7-5, which matches the Washington or Arizona State win. And obviously they beat Iowa State, which again matches the other 2 wins, the Arizona State and Washington wins. And they would have beaten Baylor twice, an 11-1 Baylor team then twice. So Oklahoma is going to have the better wins, and they're going to have a loss against Kansas State that's on par with Utah's loss against USC. Both of those teams are 8-4. So I think Oklahoma, once they beat Baylor, will have a better resume. But right now, the committee is leaving themselves an out because they can do whatever they want with that situation.
Yeah, I actually think I agree with you. I think they'll put in Oklahoma, but for the simple fact, to me, they propped up Baylor because the whole year they've kind of downplayed Baylor. If you look at the past rankings, they've kind of been ranked too low, in my opinion.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden they kind of push them up there now. So I think they're kind of doing that because they want Oklahoma to get in.
And it could be.
That's just my opinion. I mean, they've done that in the past too. That's one of the problems I've had with the committee is where you see at the bottom you'll have some of these like SEC teams that you're like, wow, they're in there, and then they're playing someone that they like an Alabama or a Florida, so that kind of props them up, or even in the Big Ten and apps the Big 12. It just happens, and it kind of bothers me when they do that.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what they select if those results turn out the way that they should, which would generally be if the Vegas line is correct, that Utah wins a one-score game and Oklahoma wins roughly a one-score game as well.
Now, I'm going to harp on this like I did last call when I was talking about 0-1 Miami versus, the 0-16 Lions. I was wrong. Joe Harrington was not the quarterback. I went back and looked. It was Dante Culpepper, John Kitna, and they had 4 games within 7 points. Every other game was a blowout. There was one that was, I think, 9, but the rest of them were double digits and sometimes even into 20s to 30s. And I actually went back and checked, and Miami had 40 NFL players on that team that went to the NFL.
Okay. I made my points the other night. I certainly justified and gave some validity to your argument, if you recall. But I still just don't see an NFL team because, again, my argument would be we've got 53 NFL players playing 40 NFL players, and we've got 40 NFL players who have yet to be NFL players. Not that some of them weren't basically the same player that was on the college team that would then the next year be playing in the NFL, but there is some consideration that needs to be made to freshmen and sophomores in college that will eventually be NFL players versus playing, like players, but 5 years with more maturity. And also, again, the coaching staffs and the NFL approach, I think, would be telling. It would be fascinating to see, which of course we never will.
Yeah, I know. I always thought that'd be a good idea. I would buy a ticket to the game if they had the worst NFL team play the best college team. I would love to see that, but I don't think that'll ever happen.
Well, it used to happen.
It did?
Well, not the worst NFL team. They had the Super Bowl champions play a college all-star team.
Yeah, I don't care. You could throw together the best college players ever, and I still don't think you'd beat whoever the Super Bowl champion is.
Yeah, you should look that up on, Google that. And unfortunately, the game.
I did not know that.
Well, unfortunately, the game was never taken seriously, and the Super Bowl teams didn't play starters and just messed around. And yeah, it was the Super Bowl teams taking on college all-star teams. This went into the 70s. Like, this wasn't in 1942.
So I don't know if you're old enough, but do you remember watching that?
No, I was close to being able to watch that, but I did not see any of those. I just knew about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research on that. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yep. Okay,
Thanks
Matt.
for taking my call, though, Mark.
Absolutely. Have a good night. All right, Yardvark's Lawn Care. Man, I was really hoping my Buckeyes got the chance to curb stomp the Tide again. Jay Jobs, Oklahoma was down double digits many times this season in games. Yes, Oklahoma was not looking impressive 2 or 3 weeks ago. They have righted the ship to a certain extent and put themselves in a good place in terms of evaluating the games. A month ago, they were giving us a loss to Kansas State. They were giving us only a 4-point win to TCU a few weeks ago. and a nail biter against Iowa State, in which they won on a failed 2-point conversion. Last week was Oklahoma's most impressive victory of the year, could be argued, certainly in the last couple months. All right, folks, I am going to go through the rest of the live chat. And James Scott, man, this guy, James, I appreciate it so much that James gets on here and understands to a certain degree what it takes to do this, especially since I'm headed out to work for the night, and that we get on here and talk college football, and hopefully we do it at a level in which we can be proud. What we strive to do is the best discussion, debate, and analysis online. And we don't hit that mark each and every day, but we do our best. Then we come back the next day and we try again. So, James, we appreciate your appreciation for what we do, and encouraging others to simply hit the like button. I've been saying for weeks that I'm going to produce and post a video in which I'm going to outline all the various ways in which you can help us grow and build the channel here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. What if Georgia beats LSU? We've tackled that one for many rounds. Mineral Tim 79. I am not going to have the energy or the time to delve into that. Yeah, Tony Al Dorsey. There are a number of interesting quarterback versus former team scenarios, of course, that could come into play during this college football playoff. Justin Fields against Georgia, Joe Burrow, of course, against the Ohio State University. NBA fan is setting the record straight to let us know that Ohio State now has a better resume than LSU on top of the eyes test. Fortunately, here I rank the teams, and it's my top 25, in which I still have LSU at number 1. Sam, good to see you. And I think we're going to wrap it up right here. If there's anything, Swampy McGee, thank you so much for the compliment. I appreciate it. Don't know what you're referring to, but we always try to tell the truth. So that goes without saying. So lock it in right here. I've got championship game weekend previews all over the place. They will be coming out every few hours for the next several days. All the major conference championship games, and I will do my best to get to the group of 5 conference championship previews as well. If you have any comments or questions that you would like me to respond to, please don't leave them just in the live chat. Just copy and paste them and leave them in the comment section of any of the videos, and I will get to them. We had such a response to the Dabo Swinney is whining video, and the Michigan, is there a culture issue? And of course, my top 25 that actually makes sense. And a number of other videos that we posted on Sunday and Monday. Thank you so much. My Ohio State, Michigan post-game analysis videos over like 33,000 views, which is the most successful video that we've posted here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and will hopefully soon be the norm. I will let all of you know who are currently online or will be watching the recorded version here that Christmas is coming. So please shop Amazon using the link in the description section of any of the videos. So it's exactly the same shopping experience. And obviously, many of us, most of us in this country, shop on Amazon. So you can simply do your shopping just using the link in the description section of any of the videos, and you will help us out tremendously by doing that. We've had a nice prediction season at 58% against the spread, 12-8 with a few near misses late in the day on Saturday, 12-8 against the spread, 78% against the money line. So please check out my predictions and grab the link that states Voice of College Football Community next to it in any of the comments section, the description section of any of the videos. You can grab it right there. I will be live throughout the weekend, of course, with championship play, and we'll be taking your calls, and I will announce those live streams. Many of you comment from time to time that you would like to see a live stream schedule. I would love to be able to make a live stream schedule, and that is going to be one of my goals as we hit the off season. I'm going to check out the last few comments, and then we'll shut it down for a night, and we'll be right back here. J Jobs, appreciate the send off. And David is telling me that my Dabo video was pure clickbait. Anybody that's watched me for a time knows that that's not my style. So watch the video if you'd like. If not, it certainly wasn't intended to be clickbait. It was in response to Dabo Swinney's whining comments following the South Carolina game. Zachary, we appreciate your support as well. So my next video release of a championship weekend, I keep saying championship weekend, a championship game preview will be early in the morning. I don't know exactly which one that's going to be or which one I've scheduled, but we're hitting all the 5 major conferences and hopefully more right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you so much for all that you do in supporting the channel.